Greetings once again, folks, and welcome to yet another session of my Artsy Musings. And we continue with our little portrait of Sage, the only cat available at this point. In fact, she's not even coming in to say hello. Is Finn. Sage is on the wander. She might pop in later, so we'll see. But Finn, are you going to come say hello? No. You're just ignoring me, so all right, fair enough. So we continue with this piece, and as I had, first of all, welcome. Before I even begin, welcome to any new subscribers. If you're newly hopped upon my channel and you like what you see so far, and please do hit the subscribe button and also the bell icon so that you can receive notifications of any future uploads. And of course, please like and share and absolutely comment if you have any queries or anything to say whatsoever. I welcome the engagement, and it also helps my algorithms. So yes, please do so. Right. Let's get to it then. Now Finn has disappeared. So this is a portrait of Sage. And as I mentioned in the description below, it is all about I belong to this group of artists and art appreciators called North Coast Artists Group, and we meet the second Saturday of every month, and we usually have a demonstrating artist and what have you that comes along, and then just feedback about stuff, and then we generally bring along an artwork of our own to display, and then it gets judged by peers, etc. And then we have winners and what have you. But anyway, we have a theme each month. And that theme this month is Feline Fun. And I thought I've got a nice couple of images of little Sage as she likes to always stretch out, loves stretching out on the kitchen floor whilst waiting for her supper or whatever, and she just stretches out and waits while Finn, on the other hand, is all bouncy and eager and can't wait and all that stuff. So they're very different natures, and Sage just relaxes completely and stretches out. So I thought this is quite a fun pose in light of the theme for this month's get together. So this is it, and also it poses. Excuse the pun. It poses quite an unusual layout. From the usual, and from my usual, of course, as well. In terms of cat portraits, I've done them all kind of pretty much close up, and the last few have been like right close in on their faces almost. So yes, we're just having a bit of fun with this one, and yeah, just loose. I'm trying to get a little bit more loose than the previous ones, and rather bring in introduce the mood per se. Her little expression is just precious, because she's got this naughty little expression. She wants to she's like stretching out her paw here to, and curling this other one and what have you. So she's got this cheeky little expression on her face as well, which is also fun in line with the theme. I think today I'm going to start introducing a little bit of color, and I think with Sage's body, and I'm going to just play around with some pale blue here with Sage's body, and I'm going to work a lot as far as possible, and I'll use a little bit of lilac as well in places where it's darker, because her fur, although I mean it is white, so it doesn't, you don't get any darks except for the little fur markings, etc. But you don't get any very darks on her body, unlike what you get with Finn, who's completely black, and thus you get this, you know, it just swallows the light. Sage's fur is very reflective, being this powdery white, and however, in the shadow areas you get this almost luminescence, and I just want to work with that, and I want to loosen up with this piece. So let me just, I want it to be kind of line. I want a lot of line work to bring this piece together, rather than painstaking sort of smooth. You know what I mean. You know what I mean. As soon as I start concentrating, my thought patterns or speech patterns deteriorate. Yeah, I'm just trying to work out here where I need to get a little bit of lilac perhaps going as well. I want to try and work as loosely as possible with this piece, and then just focusing on honing up a couple of areas. The vast majority, just this nice loose line work. It also which lends itself to the expression of her physical form, her musculature, etc. So I am literally doodling here, and then I will smooth and blend and work with that a little bit more as I go. But for the most part, just working around this piece with line. Let's try with a little bit of the lilac now, if I can find it. Where is the pale lilac? Where is it? Where are you? Where are you? Ah, there you go. So let's bring that in a bit as well. And I shall also use a slightly darker lilac as well, and then blend all the three together. Perhaps even a little bit of blue for the you know, sort of an ultramarine for the slightly darker. There's a couple of little spots here which are a little darker than others, but also adds, you know, using a blend of the three different hues of Huey Lewis and the News of blue / lilac, that sort of spectrum. It also brings in the form of it, you see, so that's quite nice. Yeah, and then there's a few little pinks in her nose and her inside of her ears and that sort of thing, which I shall of course also be depicting. For the most part, I'm trying to just get these lovely shapes going, because she's stretched out, so you can sort of almost see her muscles beneath her fur, and to just depict that a little bit. I've also got a darker lilac there. Okay. Let's see, what have I got there? What have I got here? Oh, that's even darker still. Okay, perfect. Talking to myself. Sorry. Right. And even in these, like between her toes, it's quite dark. So I'm going to also use some darker blue, the ultramarine there. Now, as I'm always going on at ad nauseum when it comes to these expressions, is always to remember the feeling, what it feels like more than what it actually looks like, because I'm always maintaining that not to copy what something looks like, don't copy what you see, copy what you feel, or in fact, with no copying. Scratch that. So this is not about. And even when it comes to a portrait which demands a semblance of accuracy, you've got to you've got to get it looking like the subject, but not to copy. Because I'm using quite a bit of license here. I'm using a photograph as my reference. However, it is very, very important to understand the difference between, I'm not trying to replicate the photograph. I'm using some artistic license here in using color and using line, doodling, etc. to bring about this expression and its form, etc. This here is not a replication of a photograph. That's absolute. Please, if you are an artist or a beginning artist, bear that in mind. It's hugely important to do so. Let's see. I need to look for some sort of paler. I want to get this nice these pinky tones going here a little bit. So the floor. So yes, if you're, I do get sidetracked a little bit. If you are a beginner artist, don't get hooked up with trying to copy exactly what you see. I think it's important. I believe so anyway. Other art teachers might disagree. I don't know. However, the way I would teach if I was a teacher, which I am really, I suppose, is to first work with the feeling. How does something feel? Because that pertains to how we observe. When we look at something, what does it make me feel like? Rather than, oh well, see it, copy it, demanding absolute accuracy and all that sort of thing. Fair enough. You need to learn about techniques, and you need to learn all sorts of things about form and shading and all this sort of stuff. Creating something from a grid, but that's to me is secondary to feeling, because the feeling is what is communicated through the artwork. It's how, because the observer or the buyer or whatever it is in an exhibition or whatever it is going to be drawn by how it makes them feel, how an artwork makes them feel, not whether it's because they don't have the photographic reference to go for, to judge with, to judge by. they go, you see people standing and looking at length at a particular artwork, a painting, and even an abstract. It requires contemplation, because what is contemplation? Contemplation is how something makes you feel. Yeah, so you work with that. You're working with the energy of it, and that's what I'm always trying to drum in over and over again, as I said, ad nauseum, because I believe that that's the most important factor in any artwork, and whether it's from a beginning stage throughout to exceptionally advanced levels, and if you want to put a time frame, or at least a grading sort of thing, there is nothing. There is no grading. There is no right and wrong. It all comes down to feeling. The most arbitrary little scribble, a little doodle, can make someone feel something, and that's what is important. So that now you start to work with feeling. Now you're translating feeling onto the substrate, the paper, the canvas, or whatever it is, rather than copying, because copying is void of the emotive content. It is void of emotive appeal. It is void of energy. It doesn't have an energy to it. It isn't an expression. It's just a carbon copy, photocopy, whatever you want to call it. And then you start judging it based on how well you've copied something. So yeah, that's to me that's irrelevant. It defeats the object of art. And even if it's anatomically incorrect, it doesn't matter. If it has a feeling, I've seen so many artworks that aren't absolutely, they haven't crossed their T's and dotted their I's, but it exudes emotion. So I'm using these strange colors here, the pinks and the blues and what the lilacs and the blues and the sort of pinks. And then I can soften the vibrancy of those colors with a little bit of charcoal over the top. It doesn't darken them, it just kind of smooths them a little bit, actually. Yeah, so I'm going to now introduce some of the color into her. Let's see here. Let's get with something like this. I've got some lovely little line work here. And I need to just excuse my silence while I just quietly work with this, just to gain, because these little markings are sage, so it's important that I observe those particular markings quite as accurately as possible. Just to get the ball rolling here. And she's got these. Yeah, so always start. I think if you're going to start an artwork, before you actually put paintbrush to canvas, or pen to paper, or pencil to paper, or charcoal to paper or whatever, before you start that, contemplate your reference image and how do you want to feel about this? What is the subject to make you feel? You know, I'm sitting here and I'm feeling this sage's wonderful little energy and her delicacy. She's quite a feisty little thing, and as opposed to Finn, who's quite sort of intense, but very, very loving, very, very vibrant and whatever. But Sage has got this sort of little daintiness to her, but she's also quite feisty as well. So I want that sort of joyful expression and that little character, the little character traits that denote Sage for who she is, and whether it's, and even if it's just to me, which it is, you know, I'm doing these particular portraits for me. You know, I don't intend to get rid of them. I don't intend to sell them. There's no point, because they're just showcasing, I suppose, the fact that I can do portraits. So that's the important thing. So they are meaningful to me as expressions of who Sage is in this, and who Kit Kat is, and who Finn is. So yeah, that's kind of what I'm about. I am working with her face here, but I don't really want to be right now. But I'm just sort of getting a little bit caught up with this, and that's okay for now. Just so now where I've got these cooler colors, the light, the pale blue, etc., I've got with the white conte over that, I get this nice little form happening, shapes and what have you. So that's why it's important to observe that first and just get your bearings. For many people, many artists out there, I would be preaching to the anointed, but I think I've just coined a new phrase there. But for beginners, I think these kinds of things and paying attention to these kinds of things is important. And especially that, how does this person or the subject, cat, dog, mouse, whatever it is, hamster, fish, make you feel? That's already what it is, because you're translating a feeling. And I think now it's time to bring in some more white. Let's just smudge a bit. So even with this kind of smudging business, I'm working with the, let's get some of this white pastel going. So now I've got 3 different grades of pastel. I've got the harder one, which I've just been using, and then you get this one, which is, it's a kind of intermediate softness, and then you get this other fat one that I've got here that is very soft and very white. Yeah, this is a nice sort of in-betweener, and I'll use that very soft one for the extreme highlights, perhaps on the end of her, the edge of her body and her extremities here on the light source side. But for now, that's where I wanted to get some blue in there as well. Some pale lilac. Yes, I shall make this as well. As you know from the previous, if you watch the previous session, the beginning session for this, I was deliberating as to whether to make this the first one a 45-minute, the second one an hour, and then the third one perhaps a 45-minute one again, or depending, an hour if I needed to. But I actually realized that I don't need to, and I'm going to stick to a 45-minute session here, if needs be, because now my timing has changed. I didn't think that I would be able to do this session today, but turns out I am, clearly. So I've got, and this being Wednesday, I now have Thursday and Friday if necessary to complete, but I don't think I will. I think one more 45-minute session will suffice. It's quite a simple piece, this, really. As you can see, so when I start making these markings now, they're radically softer and therefore more, they apply differently, or the charcoal, at least the pastel, applies itself differently, and I can just work over that with different slightly markings within the markings. Yeah, she got a little bit of no, she doesn't. Never mind. So I'm also going to be, as you'll see later on, I'm also going to be bringing in my eraser to help me. Her little toes, her little toes are all stretched out like little hands. So we've got a couple of focal points in this artwork, and one of them is down here. Now, so you've got this little foot that's stretching out. That's kind of wants you to sort of touch it. She's looking to. I can imagine you looking down at her, and she's stretching out to touch your foot. So here I'm talking about emotion and how something makes you feel. So this is the feeling that I'm working with here. She's reaching out, stretching out to touch my foot. And so you've got that little energetic expression there, and then as the eye works up, because you've got this sort of curvature, this sort of almost S shape to this layout. You kind of dwell on her face, and then you move up with her body to where the top of her back leg stretches out, almost out of the top of the image area, and this little kink of her tail and what have you, and then of course her face being the focal point of the piece, you gravitate back there, and then there's another story, because you look over here and there's this little crunch of her paw. yeah, so there's a few different focal points, but this, her face being the main one, and you'll see when I work on her eyes how that all just pulls it together. So but these are the things to contemplate. Where are your points of interest? You know, might not just have one focal point. You might not just have one point of interest. You might have a few, but which is your primary focal point, and establish that, and then work how the layout works. And sometimes and this is why I think it's important not to be focusing on copying a reference image, because now you're working with technique, and the technique now brings in attention to spots which might not have been picked up in the photograph. Sometimes photographs can be not very emotive things. Yes, sometimes they are, and that's what a good photographer is good at, is capturing certain emotions. So I'm not necessarily a good photographer. I do, however, and I only use my phone as to capture images with, but I do understand emotion and observation and capturing a mood. So yeah, and then working with that's important. But when it comes to actually transposing a photographic image or a photographic reference onto paper, or onto canvas, then a different set of rules apply. You got to let go of. It's so important to let go of that need to replicate. Then you'll destroy it. It will become a dead, lifeless artwork. Forgive me for saying so, but yeah, that's what I maintain. A little bit of charcoal here, just to bring in some undertones. Yes, so I can work with this piece nicely and slowly. Hey Finn, you gonna come say hello this time? No, we just get a little tail in there. How's it? Hello. Nothing more. Sage, still not. I hope she does come in when I finish off this piece, and so you can see her and get her an idea of what her energy is like and so on. I just want to enhance a couple of spots here that hello little Finn, are you coming to say hello finally? Hey, come and say hello to everyone. There we go. There we've got a complete contrast to Sage. But yeah, hey Finn, how about that? There's little Sage. Woo, okay, bye. See ya. See ya. What was I saying now? No, I've lost track of what I was on about. Yeah, so just using a little bit of charcoal to just bring in some more, slightly more graphic quality. Again, working technique-wise, lightly with holding my charcoal stick, holding it at the end and just working around like a fan around the line work like a fan around this form. So I can afford to work quite slowly here because there's not a great deal more to do. I don't need to fill this whole space with stuff. It's just, I think the more I leave untainted, the better actually. Because that empty space over here has an expression all of its own, just like the linear, or at least the geometric lines of the grouting between the tiles, etc. Dark grouting between the tiles also has an expression all of its own. So you've got a few different elements here that actually hopefully bring the artwork to light. It would be, I don't know, it might, if I wasn't to have these lines, I think it might just sort of have this sort of plonked, I don't know. Yeah, I think it's great to have them in. They serve a purpose. And now when I work with my charcoal over the pastel, it's not quite so, the charcoal doesn't come doesn't attach to the page, to the paper quite as much as it does in these original shadowy areas that I did right at the beginning. So, however, if I was to push a little harder, and it does, but even so, I'm going to have to use for these very dark little spots, and there's only a few, I'm going to have to use see, because her tail is yet another expression. It's got these little markings, little black markings at the end, and I want to pull those up, just so there's another little focal point type of thing. So, anywho. Oh yes, so the sort of negative space thing. It's important, and somehow just leaving that because it's going towards the light source type of thing, and just focusing on putting in the basics of the shadowy areas here. This little play of light that happens around her. And of course with a little bit of creative license as well, given the colouring and so on. Where's that one I saw that I wanted to use? Yeah, let's bring that in a little bit over here as well. We've got a slightly duskier lilac. And then softening it, blending it a little bit. and yet maintaining the integrity of the charcoal itself, the original charcoal sort of layer. Where you blend these colors, especially when it's over the already existing charcoal, it kind of goes this nice smokiness, takes on this smoky appearance as well. So and that's great. Let's just bring in my eraser for a little bit. I've got a few minutes left now, and I just want to see, the reason I don't usually like working with a grid, and I will never work with a grid when it comes to something like seascapes and things like that. There's no point. But the grid sometimes, and I must work this out for myself, because sometimes the grid, when you start working over it with shading and what have you, leaves a bit of a, I don't know, a mark, and I don't like that. Anyway, I'll work that out in time. It's not a big deal right now, not for this piece, but for future reference. So let's take these lines out here. I don't want them. Just the original sketch lines. Yeah, so quite a bit more work to do with the white. Really building it up the, but building it up little by little. That's important. Let's just get some form going here. Yeah, so building up little by little, because the when you apply the line work lightly, freely, it does then, when you build up a little by little, layer by layer, it then does take on a much more expressive form. So I'm not just blocking this in with white because it's just sort of, in my reference image, it's sort of a whiteout kind of thing. I need to be observant of form here. Number one is her stretchiness, her elongitudinal, the elongation of her body, and second of all, the direction of her fur, and that kind of also lends itself to her stretchiness. Languid stretch. And just building up the odd highlight area, and then just working that up slowly. There's no rush. And then you can take your time. When you do take your time about it, then you can start. It's because it's coming together at a nice, easy pace. You can start to see how it forms up before your eyes, and you can make subtle adjustments and tweaks and what have you on the fly as you go. When you rush through something, you don't get the same That's why you need to take time. Give it the time it requires. Gosh, I've been yakking a lot during this session, haven't I? Nevertheless, it's reasonably informative yakking. So yak away I do. Not just a yak attack. I think we'll just bring in a little bit more blue expression down the bottom here. Bit of eraser, and I think I shall probably do the same at the top there. Don't want it to be too much, just to give it a bit of a, again, it's got that now mixed with the charcoal. It takes on that sort of slightly dusky appearance. Okay, look, I think we're done for this session, and I'm happy with the way it is proceeding, and I don't need to do any more today except for what I'm doing. So the next session, the final session, I shall bring in her eyes and work on these little subtleties like her markings and so on, as well as just enhancing the whiteness of her body, etc. But for now, I think it's going very well. I'm pretty happy with the blends of color and what they bring to the artwork in terms of mood and somewhat gaiety, etc. So yeah, I'm happy with it. Anywho, so thank you guys for joining me, and I hope you've enjoyed the process. As I said, if you do, and if you have not yet, then please do subscribe and hit the bell icon, etc. All that stuff, all that lovely stuff. And yes, please do always, if you can, comment. I always appreciate that, and I will always respond. So yes. Until next time, then, I bid you oodles and oodles of toodles. And along with that, I hope that you are good and kind and gentle and caring and loving, etc., etc. And yeah, I'll catch you again on the flip side. So take it easy, have a fantastic day further, and catch you again for the last session. Bye! And don't forget to doodle.